All right. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today, we're going to have a continuation of the live stream we had and the Twitter space. Today, we are going to cover the passing, now official, big, beautiful bill, which has been Trump's signature budget law and domestic policy focus. There's a lot of things to talk about the bill, from making permanent Trump's tax cuts from his first administration, a significant expansion in funding to ICE and deportation policies. But we went through kind of a very crazy 12, 24 hours. Once it passed the Senate and went to the House, there was a large holdup in the House during the rules votes, where we did have a substantial amount of Republican congressmen pull down and said that they would not vote for this bill and that they would not support it. Speaker Johnson basically kept the House in session all night long, finally got the rules to pass. Almost all the Republicans voted through. And then in this latest round, what we saw in this vote, only 2 Republican congressmen voted against it, Fitzpatrick and Macy, and all the Democrats. But the bill has now been passed, and we are hearing that President Trump will sign that tomorrow on the 4th of July in the White House, officially making it to law, solidifying this legislation as a key component of his domestic agenda. And really the first major act of Congress in this latest round of Congress that's really passed some legislation of significance. A lot of the criticism in this latest Congress has been that it's not that many laws have been passed, not that much action has been passed, a lot of deadlock, people being held up. And now it looks like finally they have something they can hold on to and maybe even go into the midterms and campaign on with that. And so now tomorrow the law is going to be signed by President Trump. And so with that, I'll go to the speakers. And Clint, I'll go to you. You were in the space yesterday. You were in our video yesterday. Love to hear your reaction now that Congress has passed this law.
Well, first off, I wasn't even aware that it had passed, so that's news to me. But it's not surprising. It seemed like it was kind of an inevitability after they got past those holdouts in the middle of the night last night. I'm very curious to see what the holdouts got, what concessions they got. I hope that it'll improve the final product. I am not very pro this bill. I think that granted the CBO estimates are always off, but I still think that it's quite evident that this is going to increase the deficit and ultimately the national debt. As a actual fiscal conservative, it concerns me deeply that we're going to be paying more in interest than we do on our national defense, and it's going to rapidly increase from here, and it doesn't seem as if there's any breaks. I do understand the arguments that it's supposed to increase productivity, increase GDP, so therefore, even with all the tax reductions, it's supposed to bring in more tax revenue, and therefore it'll be, neutral. I'm not convinced of that. I'm also not convinced at all that they're actually going to use the $150 billion that was allocated towards deportations and border security to actually deliver on mass deportations. I'd be happy to be proven wrong on that. But I just struggle to imagine they're actually going to do it. So I'll eat my words gladly if they do. But really, I just think that what bothers me more than anything about this is that there's this framing that, like Nancy Mace put out, that we're un-American if we don't support this bill, or if the Congress people don't vote for this bill. It's like, we're talking about a $3.3 trillion bill. These are things that historically we would have never even considered as a possibility. Speaker Mike Johnson got the role after McCarthy, promising that he was only going to do standalone bills, that they were done with these big, beautiful monstrosities. It's obviously a lie. It's obviously put together in this way so that they can shove through as much pork and garbage as they possibly can. And I don't like it, and I'm sick of it. That doesn't mean that I don't like the good things that are in the bill. Obviously, if you do a $3.3 trillion bill, there's going to be some shit that I like. But broadly speaking, I oppose it, and that's my position.
Let me just go down the line. Bryce, I think you were with us yesterday as well on the space. I'll give you the opportunity to give your initial reaction and where you think we're going from here.
I'm against the bill. I think anything that's going to add $5 trillion to the national debt it's non-negotiable at this point. I love tax cuts, but here's the thing. You can't have tax cuts and continue to spend the amount that we're spending. You're going to end up with deficits. So with tax cuts have to come fiscal responsibility. There is no fiscal responsibility in this bill. we have been served a turd sandwich, and it was extraordinarily sad to see the party that is supposed to be the party of fiscal conservativeness cheer a bill that's going to cost the people of this country $5 trillion in the end. And I'll end it with that.
Let me go, Michael. Actually, I see, and then in your the kind of the bottom that you're for the Center for Security Policy, if I'm reading that correctly. So one of the questions, by all means, give your initial reaction. But one specific aspect that and we talked about this yesterday in the space, and it's this really, it looks like an expansive power of ICE specifically, right? And probably the largest concentration of federal power, specifically related to deportation policy, that we've seen since the establishment of the Department of Homeland Security. And I'd like your take, besides just your initial reaction to the bill, but this idea that, are we seeing a substantially now more powerful federal government because of this bill specifically related to deportation policy?
Well, I've got no problem with using national government to deport illegals. That's one of the few duties that a central government should have. Overall, you have to get the art of the possible in Washington, D.C., and with such a narrow margin, you have to take what you can get. So I think this is a terrible, wasteful bill. It's going to be a plague on future generations of our country. It's going away from what was promised, which was to have standalone appropriations for every single sector of the federal government. So it's back to the corruption and the pork and all the waste in it. As a defense guy, I really like to see our defense adequately well-funded and modernized, but this thing just throws money at the problem the way the liberals like to throw money at welfare and everything else. The defense budget is just as bloated and corrupt as USAID. And it's a huge scam that a lot of the Trump people just don't want to address, but it has to be addressed. This bill just makes the problem worse, apart from certain upgrades. It also, there's no strategy guiding the defense budget either. It's simply keep the same old strategy that we've had, keep the same force structures that we've had all around the world. And the only real new thing is to have a Golden Dome missile defense system, which is a great news because it's something we've been waiting for 40 years. But other than that, it's a terrible, awful bill. It's a turd sandwich bill. We're all going to have it shoved down our throats and those of our children and our grandchildren. But that's the reality of Washington.
All right. John, do you approve this bill? Because right now I'm getting pretty consistent negative reaction. Brian, I think I know your reaction from a lot of it. So, John, let me go to you do you approve this bill? Do I have anybody in the panel who thinks that this is a good bill? John, you're muted. You're muted. We can't hear you. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you now. Go ahead.
You can hear me?
Yes, we got you.
You can hear me. Okay. Yeah, so hopefully you can hear me. Apologies, I'm on vacation with my kids, but I was against this bill, and everything everybody said up until now has made a ton of sense. And I agree with kind of Elon's posturing and everything else, but I kind of feel like this is one chance to quote unquote trust the plan. Say, fine, blow the system up, everything else. Let's give them one chance. And I'm against deficit spending, and I'm a big believer. If this doesn't work, I'm leaving the country. So everything is on the line for me and my children and everything else. I'm leaving the country. So my philosophy has kind of evolved from being adamantly opposed to this bill to saying, okay, well, all right, well, if Thomas Massey and all these other people, if they want to trust the plan, I'll trust the plan one time and we'll see what happens. So that's kind of where I am. And I could be wrong. And there's a very good chance I'm wrong. But, there's not a lot of, in terms of risk reward, there's not a lot of downside in being wrong at this point. That's
John,
my philosophy.
Can I ask you a question, John? I'm curious, what would a win look like? Like, what would the outcome be that would make you not have to leave the country? Like, what is the best case scenario that comes as a consequence of this bill?
Oh, yeah, it's easy. Having a speaker who uh, passes single issue bills. Um, my optimal outcome is probably more aligned with what Elon has been advocating for, um, the last 6 months. I think a I think we're going bankrupt and going bankrupt in a hurry. And the most depressing thing for me is the realization that actually voting doesn't matter, party doesn't matter. There, it, at this point, Speaker of the House, Senate Majority Leader, they are all complete, complicit losers in a broken process, and they don't give a shit. So any bill that passes is going to be filled with pork, and fine. So you can say, oh, well, maybe we're naive. We don't understand how it works. But then we're all just complicit in feeding these monsters. So for me, at this point, I'm kind of, I guess, where Elon is, which is totally checked out. There's nothing, there's basically nothing that can convince me that the system can be fixed. We are in a permanently broken system. Both parties, almost every single person in Congress is culpable. And we are completely broken, and there's nothing we can do about it. So that's kind of where I am right now.
So, man, I'm pretty surprised that I think I mean maybe not surprised, but I'm kind of seeing the same vibes as yesterday's live stream in the space. There was, for the most part, a lot of people were very concerned about this bill. So, Brian, you haven't spoke. I would say, John, just a quick note on that. I think it's important to highlight Massey did not vote for the bill. He was one of the two Republican congressmen who voted against the passage of this bill, but the GOP could lose two congressmen for this bill to pass. So, Brian, your reaction, and then I'll go to Mike.
You're muted, Brian.
Brian, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry. Thanks for having me, Mario and Stefano. Look, there were only two Republicans that voted against this bill, so we can't blame the entirety of a party in both the House and the Senate that put 0 votes for this bill. We can't blame Democrats for this bill. You can blame them for other things in the past. This got 0 Democratic votes, okay? And there are very specific reasons why Democrats didn't want to support this, mainly that the biggest takeaway is $1 trillion about in Medicaid. And then the biggest add is almost $4.5 trillion, or more than $4.5 trillion in tax cuts that are almost entirely for the ultra wealthy, not people like us. I'm not assuming anyone here is ultra wealthy. If I'm wrong, I apologize. But I would tell anyone here who leans libertarian that supported Trump or voted for Trump in this election, you got what you voted for. We warned you. We told you he wasn't going to stay true to his principles. We already saw what he did in his first term as far as the debt and spending. And in fact, since George H.W. Bush, there hasn't been a Republican president that has reined in spending better than their Democratic counterparts. It's literally been a reversal in the roles. So the Democratic presidents, Clinton, Obama, and Biden, all reined in spending more relative to the deficit and the debt than Republicans have since George H.W. Bush. What do we have now? We have a situation where Elon's talking about forming a new party, but I think the libertarians here are laughing because what he's talking about is basically forming a libertarian party, and it already exists. So what he wants to do, and with the people he's trying to line up, don't really differ significantly from where libertarians stand. So the question is, how are you going to grow a libertarian faction both within the Republican Party and that's outside? How are you going to grow that? Because Elon doesn't understand, I think, American politics terribly well. And if he actually knew a few things, he wouldn't be talking about a new party. He'd be leaning towards libertarians because he's going to try to create a new party that's just going to compete with libertarians. It's not going to offer anything different other than maybe some new faces. But if I'm mistaken, where ideologically is he speaking that's different from where libertarians stand? So where I see this is where we were a day ago, right? There were all these people on this panel saying, oh, maybe it's going to fall apart. Elon's against it. Look, all these Republicans are going to Two revolted in the end. And they passed it. No real problem. No changes, by the way, were made to the Senate version. The Senate version is what they ate, despite all the fuss that they made. And then here we are. So what I'm saying is by the end of this cycle of Congress, when the midterms are up, Are Elon and Trump going to be at each other's throats and separate political entities with people voting against MAGA and Republicans because of Elon? Or by that time, if they can settle these differences in less than a day from where we had this, or 2 days and when we had this space, does anyone really think that Elon's going to be absolutely taking votes away from Trump and MAGA in the midterms? I'm not convinced that the rift won't be here. Some people who know Trump very well, Lev is amazing. He's convinced that it is a permanent rift, and I hope he's right. I'm just not as convinced at this point. And it's just terrible for the country as a whole, by the way, for regular Americans.
So, Mike, let me go to you as kind of your initial reactions on this bill. I know you just joined us, but for the most part, everybody here is not a fan of this bill. They do not like it passed for various reasons. The vast majority of it is the concern of U.S. deficits. So, Mike, what is your reaction to this bill? And do you think it's a good bill, or are you concerned about deficits or other things?
Well, thank you so much for having me. We did have a little bit of a technical difficulty when we got through it. I was able to hear everybody. But my sentiments pretty much echoes everyone else on the panel. Even though that I am an independent Democrat, I'm very deeply concerned about how much we're running up the debt. It doesn't matter if it's under a Democratic administration or if it's under a Republican administration. Math is math. And I think my biggest takeaway from today is the arc of history. I believe that Democrats, when we were in control of the House and the Senate, we reached a little bit too far and we alienated a large swath of the population. And I believe that the Republicans are drinking from the fire hose and doing the exact same thing. My biggest fear is not for Democrats, it's not for Republicans, it's just for average, everyday Americans. Because what is going to happen once the Democrats are in control and that pendulum swings the other way? What are the overreaches are going to be? The 2A amendment people, how are they going to feel? The states' rights people, what is in it for them? My biggest concern here is that we are no longer looking at a Democratic or Republican party. We're going to have to go to more of like a European style parliamentary system where you have 4 or 5 parties, you have to form a coalition government. I mean, we're really in untested waters with the size and the scope of this bill. And you can rebrand it, whatever you want to call it, big, beautiful. It doesn't make a hill of beans different. Elon was exactly right. You can have a big bill, you can have an ugly bill, but you can't have a big, beautiful bill. The two just don't go together.
So that's, I guess, an interesting. So I'm going to try to go now to kind of some of the specific aspects of kind of what this bill is, and also kind of this broader sense of policy, because there wasn't this major clash in the end. So I think it's important to highlight. Look, the Speaker Johnson suffered to get this through. Right, there was a lot of Republican holdouts. I think to a lot of people's questions is what changed, because the bill in and of itself, the Senate version, is the one that passed. So I think there were 8 to 10 Republican congressmen and congresswomen who said they were not going to support it. They at the end switched, and then of the overall vote, only 2 voted no with the rest of the Democratic Party. And so we really don't know. So Clint, let me just go to you also on this to start off this conversation. I think the question that I have now is, I guess we talked, one of the reasons why we're having these spaces in the live stream is Elon really going to try to make this bill fail? Is he going to able to get Republican Congress members to hold out?
Guys. This bill is going to pass. This bill is going to pass.
It passed. It's tomorrow. Trump is signing it.
Yeah. So forget about that. The bill's passed.
Correct. Well, I guess to go back to this question to Clint, is kind of like, look, we were speculating how much Elon was willing to pressure the Republican Congress members to not vote for this bill. Clearly, that didn't happen. And so, Clint, is there a conversation saying maybe we overestimated Elon's political influence within the GOP? And is that something that, because he couldn't get this done, is it really likely or expected that he's really going to be able to change the GOP, or even maybe create his own political party, as he stated on this?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of who has more impact on incumbent congressmen, obviously Donald Trump has more impact as it stands. However, Elon contributed somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 or 400 million to get Trump elected, not including the billions he spent to buy X, which obviously helped Trump get back in the White House too. So if, this is a big if Elon is actually committed to funding primary challengers to the swamp, he could make an extraordinary difference if he wants to. That doesn't mean that he will. This is why Trump got so. I mean, part of why he got so upset with him is that if you create a third party, or if he joins the Libertarian Party and funds it to the tune of $250 million, all of a sudden you have a real problem on your hands, and the duopoly is really under threat. So I don't know that Elon's going to proceed with that. I think that he is very sincere, by my estimation, about his concerns about the math that Mike was describing when it comes to, doesn't matter who's spending it, it's being spent, and we're racking up debt at a record pace. So I think he's sincere about that, but that doesn't mean that at the end of the day, he won't, consider his business opportunities and all of the sacrifices that he's already made and just say, I'm out. I'm going to focus on Mars. I'm done with this government stuff. So I'm curious to see how he plays it. But my personal opinion, even though, I ran for the VP slot under the Libertarian Party in this last election cycle, even though I ultimately ended up voting for Trump, is that I would actually like to see him basically acquire the Libertarian Party. And
okay, I got to ask you then, do you feel that you wasted your vote and it was an ultimate betrayal?
No, I don't. I mean, the main reason that I voted for him is because I wanted him to negotiate with Putin and try and end the proxy war in Ukraine. Now, he hasn't been successful in doing so, but that was definitely not going to improve. What's that?
Yet. He has not been successful yet.
Of course.
Well,
I mean,
you say day one, and it's been 6 months, so he's 6 months late according to his own standards.
Sure, yeah. Yes, he hasn't accomplished it. I am grateful that he's actually picking up the phone and trying to thaw the ice that had been created between the U.S. State Department and Vladimir Putin. I think that's progress. A lot of people were sleeping on the fact that we were sleepwalking into a proxy war with the largest nuclear power on Earth, the two largest nuclear powers on Earth. So that was huge to me. Securing the border, stopping the Biden deluge was very important to me. But as far as the spending expectations, I didn't expect him to spend in a fiscal conservative fashion. He was responsible for $7.8 trillion added to the national debt in his first presidential term, only outdone in American history by Joe Biden, who racked up $8.4 trillion in his 4 years. So this is not a big surprise in that regard, but I am disappointed with this bill, and I think he could have delivered far more for the Libertarians, who by and large did turn out and support him at the end of the day.
So let me continue to just follow along the other speakers. So Michael, let me go to you. I mean, you're talking about the Defense Department and at least the specific aspect, kind of when your original reaction, you're not too happy with it. It seems like your argument is they're throwing money at the problem, but they're not really addressing it from a strategic point of view and how the United States. So if you were advising the president, if you were in the Pentagon, if you were the Undersecretary for Policy, for example, what would you have said differently that this bill does not reflect?
Well, first we need to, what drives budgets are priorities and strategies. And so right now we have still a Cold War strategy, a Cold War force structure, an expeditionary power projection structure that we don't need, and a system of alliances that are outdated, where some of our allies have become our adversaries. And then, but we're still funding the old system. Add on top of that the inefficiencies built within that system, where the shipyards are so expensive and where it's cost so much to build aircraft, takes such a long time to do it, that we're building brand new obsolete systems for our defense. We saw what the Ukrainians did with drones against the Russians and what the Israelis did with drones in Iran. That can happen to us. We just had a senior military leader say we have no defense against that. And we're saying all these years with drone technology, and we have not devised a way to defend our homeland against enemy drone attacks. So there's a lot of this that isn't even contemplated in our defense structure and in the bureaucracy of the Defense Department, where you have almost more admirals in the Navy than you have ships. So then you have the whole corruption in the military promotion system, where it's a brown nosing way to get promoted. So the good guys seldom make it above colonel. They seldom even make it above lieutenant colonel and equivalent. And then so you have the people who were promoted to colonel under Obama are now the 4 stars under Trump. And actually in the previous administration, Trump promoted a lot of those Obama generals. And then Biden's handlers promoted even more of them. So we have a system of disastrous generals who don't know how to win conflicts, let alone minimize them, or even we find other ways of staying out of them. And you have a State Department, which actually Rubio is doing a lot to restructure and gut the State Department. It's just not public yet. But on the military side, it's just bloat and waste. And then on top of that, you have a contracting system, which is completely corrupt. It costs 3 to 5 times as much for a contractor to do the work than it does for a uniformed military person to do the same work. So a system of temporary contractors, which were for the war on terror, is still in place now to the tune of, hundreds of billions of dollars. So this stuff has to stop. And the administration hasn't even made a scratch in that.
So let me go then to Bryce. Let me go to you. How do you think the Libertarian Party, or those that kind of have this libertarian perspective view, do you think there's an opening to get members that supported Donald Trump, that supported the GOP, that were encouraged and maybe even voted for him because of Doge and Elon Musk? Is there a plan in place or a messaging in place to try to get them to support the libertarian policy of Libertarian Party and really try to affect fiscal changes because the GOP hasn't done it on their end?
Yeah, it's already on its way. We are already. Stephen Nikela is doing a fantastic job as chair right now. He has gathered many new members, people that are abandoning the GOP and coming to the Libertarian Party because they're tired of the same old, including people from the Democratic Party who are also tired of the same old, same old. Either way you go, whether it's a Republican, whether it's a Democrat, what you're going to get is war. What you're going to get is graft. What you're going to get is corruption. What you're going to get is more deficit spending. And I think what we're starting to see with the people is they're getting tired of it. I voted for Donald Trump, and I will be the first to, I think Clint is great. He's a great dude, great libertarian, but I will be the first to admit I voted wrong. I wish I could have that vote back. I wouldn't have voted for Chase Oliver. I just wouldn't have voted. It was a mistake. He promised things that he wasn't going to deliver, and the previous speaker was right. The Libertarian Party and people within the party kept telling you he was never going to do it. This was all just a ruse to get you to vote for him so that he could get into office. He hasn't done anything that's fiscally sound. He's taken the Doge cuts, what little Doge cuts there were, and he's reallocated that money to the military industrial complex. I think at the end of the day, what people are going to do is they're going to ask themselves, what is changing when I vote for the donkey or the elephant? And if you really look at it, nothing changes. They're two sides of one coin. They're a uniparty. You're going to get the same thing with just a different spin. So yeah, I think that what you're going to see is you're going to see more and more people flirting with the Libertarian Party. I will say this, I know that the Libertarian Party is reaching out to Elon Musk. I do not know if they have been able to reach him yet, but I know that that is being actively done. Why is the Libertarian Party reaching out to Elon Musk? Very simple. Too expensive to build your own party. Andrew Yang tried it. He failed. The no labels people, they tried it. They failed. The Libertarian Party has the infrastructure. We have the state infrastructure, the national infrastructure, and we have the ballot access. So if he wants to do damage, if he really, really wants to hurt the GOP and the Democrats, take $300 million, put it into the Libertarian war chest, and allow us to go to war with the Democrats and the Republicans.
So, John, let me go to you on that. Do you think that's a viable political solution and strategy that Elon Musk might do, is instead of trying to create his own party, he might go the libertarian route as they already have the infrastructure in place?
Guys, no way. No way. If you look at what Elon Musk has said, the opportunity cost of his time and everything he has said, he's basically said this whole system, forget what the libertarians want to do and what everyone else wants to do. He has said, this is a waste of my time. And I've met Elon a couple times. Like, he's kind of autistic in the way he communicates. You can't talk to somebody like that and then go and pitch them on an idea that's libertarian this, libertarian that, or Thomas Massey this, Tommy Massey that. He doesn't care. He walks away in 5 seconds. And what he realized, which should be most depressing to all of us, is that the system is so fundamentally broken and so fundamentally corrupt that it's unfixable. All of these people are disgusting and odious, and that's his conclusion.
If that
That's my
was true,
take.
he wouldn't be donating to Thomas Massey. Literally put out a tweet immediately asking, I donated to Thomas Massey. Who's next? Elon Musk came out and said me. I put out a
Yeah,
post that said the founding fathers.
let's
That the founding fathers were libertarian. He said 100%. So he's flirting with the libertarians already on X. You don't know what. Nobody knows what Elon Musk is going to do. I don't even think Elon Musk knows generally what he's going to do from day to day. He is one of those kind of, like you said, autistic individuals, but luckily for him, so are almost 98% of libertarians.
This has been a Trump bash fest. So let me give one other defense of my vote for him. I think I did not expect him to do the USAID funding freeze. As someone, because of my show, I've studied this issue at length, and I thought that was a massive win for libertarians, particularly when it comes to the nefarious utilization of USAID to foment, color revolutions and ultimately wars all over the world. So that was a huge upside that I didn't expect. As for the promises of fiscal sanity, I don't think many libertarians expected him to deliver on that anyways. I was hopeful for more peacemaking, and certainly not the bombing campaign against the Iranians. So, it's a mixed bag, of course, which is to be expected.
John, I'll let you finish your point, and then I'll go to Brian. I don't know if you had any additional points before you were speaking.
No, I appreciate that. I'll cede the floor to whomever wants to respond.
Well, Brian, let me go to you then. Let me ask the same question. Is this the start or the end of Elon Musk's political career?
I think it'd be hard to. The only way I see his career ending is if things get so bad that Trump literally imprisons him or deports him, and even if he deports him, Musk, wherever he goes, will have a tremendous amount of influence. Imagine him going to a small country and the amount of disruption he could cause just being in a small country. I mean, right
Dude,
now,
that's retarded. That's retarded. He's running SpaceX. We rule space because of Elon and because of Tesla.
Well, we rule space because the United States Department of Defense is seen fit to reward him with a lot of billions of dollars in contracts.
Controls.
So you just went. I'm going. I want you to respond. I gotta make my points first. So the Department of Defense has given him billions and billions in contracts in which audits have exposed him to have not complied with national security regulations. And now
he saves billions of dollars. Yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, Trump, one of the only times I would agree with Trump is when he said, let's turn Doge on Elon, because Doge very specifically avoided looking at any of Elon's contracts or any of the defense waste.
That's so stupid. That's so dumb. That's so dumb.
It's dumb to allow Elon to have billions of dollars that are not accountable in public.
That's so retarded, dude. Come on, man.
Yeah, exactly. We should be holding everyone accountable regardless of who they are. So if there are audits that say that he is not following national security procedures and is potentially leaking things to the Russians or others because he's having contacts that he's not supposed to have.
This is so boring.
At the state. I know national security law is boring, isn't it? It's really boring. It's those rules and security clearance regulations. Boy, why we even have them? Because of people like Elon. Because they're a liability to national security. So he's been talking.
China would own space. China would own space without Elon Musk.
By the way, X has withheld.
China would own space without Elon Musk.
Under Elon, X has stopped criticizing the Chinese government. They've really suppressed criticism from within China against the Chinese Communist Party, and they are favoring accounts that are Chinese government communist propaganda. That's Elon's
blah 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 blah.
I know it's these pesky facts are just annoying, aren't they? They're real
pesky facts. Have you been there? Have you been there? Have you?
Fantasy.
Have you been to Xinjiang province? I've been to Xinjiang province. I lived there for 8 years.
Have you been to Beijing?
Chinese Communist Party too, but so you're saying that Elon allowing the Chinese Communist Party freer reign on his platform is a good thing? That's what libertarians would want to defend?
I don't think John's a libertarian.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Well,
I'm definitely not a libertarian.
I have another point I want to make, and then I'll open up to everybody else. People
No,
have to also
I don't want to dominate the
bill.
space. I don't want to
All
talk.
of this happened with the bill.
I want to let other people. I want to let other people talk.
Trying to talk over me. This is not acceptable. Come on,
dude. I'm not trying to talk. I'm just literally trying to say I want to let other people talk.
Right,
That's
John, you're
literally
talking over
what I'm
Brian.
trying to say.
So
okay, so my last point that I'm making is that all this happened when Trump was gunning the troops for LA, when the National Guard, when all that was going on, and that was the focus. That's when he was pushing this really hard as well. And when else was he pushing it? During the Iran bombing campaign, when Israel started. And he's pushing this really hard and quickly at a time when we're literally distracted by domestic crises and foreign wars. That tells you what you need to know. He's not taking his time and trying to level with the whole country with a fireside chat, slowly and deliberately. Here's what's in the bill, and this is why I believe it. He's doing it while we're being distracted by things he's doing. So take that with a grain of salt in terms of everything he's doing. Realize that he's timing it to distract, so there is no debate. He didn't want a debate. He even said, I want by July 4th, and they shut down the debate, and the House literally ate the Senate version that they said was unacceptable just days earlier. So I hope everyone's aware of that.
Okay, I will let other people talk, but I think what you just said is completely retarded. But I'm happy to defend it, but I will let other people talk because I do not want to command the microphone.
Mike, let me go to you. So again, I think this is the issue though. It's June or a month ago, beginning of June, just around a month ago is when the first public feud happened. Mm-hmm. Didn't last long. Then there was another feud. It looked like maybe Elon would try to leverage his relationships and influence within Congress to try to force a change. He really didn't. Maybe he saw the writing was on the wall. So, Mike, let me ask you: does Elon have a continuation within the politics, or is he just going to focus on SpaceX, Tesla, etc.?
Very good question, and I'm going to answer it very, very honestly. And this is not an Elon or a Trump bashing session by any measure. I've been in and outside of DC politics now for over 20 years. And I can tell you one thing, when you first come into office, you have a certain amount of political capital. It's very finite. It only lasts for a very short amount of time. If you go back the beginning of February, many people on the left and the middle were saying that Elon was almost a shadow-like president. He had unprecedented access. Anything that he wanted, he was able to get his hands on. He used his political capital to build Doge. I was actually on the call when you can call basically Doge's birth certificate when him and Trump they were talking about crypto and Doge and getting it started and naming Doge. So from that genesis, you fast forward to February 20th, Elon had the lay of the land. He used all that political capital to form Doge. Doge had very big promises. Remember, we were going to cut $2 trillion, then we were going to cut $1 trillion. I think on paper it ended up being something in the neighborhood of 50 billion. When you make promises like that and then you dramatically underdeliver, it doesn't matter what the levers were that got in your way. It doesn't matter what the barriers are. The optics are that you failed. You had this massive agenda. You spent $220 million getting Trump elected to help you make this organization because you care a lot about the debt and deficit. But not only did you only trim $50 billion off, just like Michael said, look at defense spending. It is completely out of control. We are spending $2 and $3 billion on aircraft carriers that can be taken out by $1 million missile. It makes absolutely no sense. Did anybody look at cutting anything from the military? Did anybody look at the Doge take a glance at defense spending? Absolutely not. Therefore, Elon has rendered himself politically almost obsolete at this point. Another point, all of his money is wrapped up in Tesla. If you look at his net worth, anybody's net worth that is a uber billionaire. It's not liquid. It's not like they can go to Chase and get a couple $1 billion out of the ATM machine. It's usually in stocks and different things in their portfolio. Most of his wealth is tied up in Tesla. Tesla sales in the EU are down right now 70%. Tesla is in a lot of trouble. Elon, if he wants to build his brand back and really get back on firm financial footing and keep it that way and deliver something for his shareholders, he's going to have to spend the majority of his time back in Texas, back on the drawing board, fixing the problems they have with the full self-driving that the investors have been talking about for a long time. Elon's really got his hand full. When it comes to matters of the government, he really overplayed his hand with Doge. And I think he just spent too much of his political capital too early in his political career.
Dude, Elon does not care. That's what you're kind of missing in this whole your formula. Elon does not care.
Elon doesn't have to care for the shareholders.
Threatening him with deportation.
Brian, let me. Okay, Mike, go ahead. I'll let you answer, and then Brian, I'll let you. But go ahead because you guys both talk the same time. So Mike, answer, and then Brian follow up.
Elon is very passionate. I'll give you that. And Elon has said several times, money doesn't mean anything to him. He used the F-bomb. Money doesn't mean anything to him. He doesn't care about money. It's not even a construct to him. And I do know on the record that Elon is on the spectrum, so he thinks a little bit differently than a lot of us do. However, Elon doesn't have to care about money. But I tell you who does care about money are the shareholders, are the people that invested with Elon. Elon cannot go to space by himself. Elon cannot fix the government by himself. It is going to take money. It's going to take other people's money, more money than he currently has in the bank. So he can stand on principle. He can have a very, very principled stand. And I applaud him for that. But the way that this world works is you got to have some capital behind it. And if you're running all your investors and the people that are buying your products away, you've burnt your political capital, and you've also burnt your physical capital that you had in the bank.
Brian, I know you wanted to jump in. Go ahead.
Well, I just mean literally, and I was one of the few people on the left that downplayed this rift when it first happened between Elon and Trump. When he left, there was already talk that he was going to step aside from that role to deal with his companies, Tesla and SpaceX, which were literally on fire from exploding cars and exploding rockets. Shareholders were very upset. The boards were questioning his role and how he was costing the company money. And Elon says a lot of things. I promise you, he does actually care about money. And if he's going to lose billions of contracts with the Department of Defense, which has helped to make a lot of the money he has, and a lot of the relationships that he has profited from have come from his government subsidies and government contracts. If he loses all of that, and Trump was not beating around the bush on this, he made it clear this was a weapon he's willing to use against Elon if Elon doesn't comply with what he wants. Those are where Elon's vulnerable, and Trump doesn't have similar vulnerabilities until the midterms. Until the midterms, Elon can't affect much of any change on anything that's happening. He tried, and look what happened. Two out of 220 Republican votes. That's the percent influence he has on the House of Representatives. And in the Senate, he didn't even try. So I think he's learning the hard way. X isn't Congress, right? He can dominate X. He can have his own platform with a lot of echo chambers and sycophants and whatever. I'm not saying anybody here is that, by the way. But when it comes to affecting change with votes in Congress, he's an amateur playing at a game where there is much more experienced people. Even Trump, who is not the most sophisticated political operative, has had plenty of experience doing this. And so Elon is trying to fight a fight that he can't really win. And if he's going to try to take over an existing party, I don't know. I mean, look, I'm not trying to rip on libertarians here. Some libertarians actually made some jokes about themselves. I'm not going to add on to that. But the Libertarian Party has been trying to break through for decades, right? Elon may be their best bet to do something to see growth. I mean, I remember Ron Paul. Forget about Rand. Rand's a freaking sellout. If you're a truly principled libertarian, Ron Paul is someone that earned your respect because he was extremely principled, right? And he could earn a lot of money, and he got a lot of media attention. And in the end, did he ever have much of an effect on the presidential level and congressional level debates? He inspired a lot of passion, right? So if Elon ends up funding several Ron Pauls, is that going to change the balance of power in the Senate or the House? And in the end, the libertarian wing of the House still caved in, even with Elon's threat, and they went ahead. Only two of them And actually, one of them wasn't even a libertarian. So there was one libertarian and one guy on the other side of the Republican Party. So if you want to measure Elon's influence, I think this was something that he said over my dead body, terrible bill, and how much influence did he have in the end. So I think Elon's in for a gut check moment where he has to realize if he goes too far, Trump really could ruin a lot of things for him. And I think because of that, he'll crawl back, like Lindsey Graham, like Ted Cruz, like all these other people who opposed, like Rand Paul even, right? Where Trump was calling, oh, this guy with crazy hair. Rand Paul still votes 9 times out of 10 with Trump now and makes some noise and then goes right back to voting with him after the one time he doesn't vote with him, right? So honestly, like, I don't think we can expect Elon to save anybody or anything.
Brian, who's the libertarian? I got to ask Brian a question. Who are these libertarian wings of the Republican Party? Name every person that you believe is a libertarian within.
He's just talking about
Party.
the Freedom Caucus, I think.
None of them are really libertarian.
I agree.
You got one. You got one. You got Thomas Massey. That's it.
Chip Roy, I think it's fair to include him.
No.
Speaking to the rest of the caucus, I know.
Then you don't know what libertarian is.
I agree that most libertarians would say that these people aren't hardcore enough. I'm being generous in saying who you could lump in there.
But what you're trying to do is you're trying to tell who's libertarian within the within the Republican Party. Here's the deal: there is one person that fits the description of libertarianism within the Republican Party. That is Thomas Massey. Full stop.
But that's the point.
It helps.
If I may, I think that's actually Brian's point, right? He even said Rand Paul is not a libertarian within the GOP. And so it kind of goes back to a little bit of...
He just tried to tell me that Chip Roy was a libertarian. Come on, dude.
In a looser sense, relative to the rest of the caucus, is he really a libertarian? No, he's not. But I'm just saying that there are these wings where there's some commonality.
But I think, Bryce, that goes to kind of the difficulties of highlighting is how can the libertarian policies, or the party in of itself, because I think in 2024, what we saw was Donald Trump, back then candidate, former President Donald Trump, during the election, managed to get libertarians to support him at larger numbers. Probably a critical. People don't.
That was because Chase Oliver was the nominee of the Libertarian Party, dude. Now, had people chosen Clint, who I backed for the VP, and somebody else for president, I think things would have, gone a different way. Here's the thing: we have a history of making bad decisions when it comes to nominees. We pick activists, we pick academics. And academics and activists do not make good candidates. But here's the thing. If the Libertarian Party was able to have, say, $200 million in their coffers, where they could run ads, which they can't do right now. Money makes a difference in American politics. If the Libertarian Party was able to have something where they could start putting out ads, putting out attack ads, being able to compete against the Democrats and the Republicans on a level playing field, we don't know what would happen. Right now, yeah, of course the Libertarians don't do anything. They don't have any freaking money. They don't have a single dollar in the bank. So if somebody like Elon Musk comes around, or somebody like Nicole Shanahan comes around and decides to put millions into their coffers, we're having a different conversation because now the Libertarian Party can actually afford to do something. So, miss me with your bullshit. Don't tell me that we haven't done anything. Ron Paul ran a shoestring budget, didn't have much money in the bank. The Libertarian Party, for all of the conversations that we've had, has not had any kind of money to make any kind of dent against the Republicans or the Democrats. You get somebody like Elon Musk, you get somebody like Nicole Shanahan backing the Libertarian Party, there's going to be collateral damage. There's going to be somebody that we can get in, whether it's Congress or the Senate. And listen, we're not going to see a ton of change, but what we're going to see is we're going to make life difficult for the Democrats and we're going to make life difficult for the Republicans.
Actually, Brian, so let me sorry, Bryce, because Michael, I'm going to go right to you, but let me just ask this to Bryce quickly. I mean, if you look at the Libertarian platform, I think it's a safe assumption, right? Let me put the GOP hat for a second, like a GOP operative's hat. If you look at the Libertarian platform, it clearly is much more aligned to generally the GOP than to Democratic Party. So like the Democratic counterpoint, for example, would be the Green Party, right? In the left of the spectrum. And we've generally seen the Green Party
So
only.
this is your problem. So I'm a former Republican, right? I was elected. I was an elected representative as a Republican in Massachusetts. I went to the Libertarian Party because you're right. I felt that the Libertarians kind of were a little bit more where I was. But here's the deal. Libertarians have a very eclectic view. You can't just say that libertarianism is either right or it's left. It's not either one of those things. It's an eclectic view and it takes different kinds of things. And it's basically built on liberty, right? So this ideology, one of the biggest things, people pin us for is being pro LGBTQ. We're not pro the collective, right? We're pro the individual doing whatever they feel is right for themselves. We don't want the government telling them what they can and cannot do. The Libertarian Party also has the, which I think, whether or not I agree with it, it's there, but has a different type of border policy than what
Nobody
the GOP
cares.
has.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares what you have to say, dude. Shut the fuck up.
John, let Bryce finish, because I do want to go to Michael afterwards. But go ahead, Bryce.
At the end of the day, you can't say what anything is going to happen until a party, whatever third party it is, has money, right? Look at what the Kennedy campaign was able to do. He was able to get on the ballot in a shit ton of states thanks to Nicole Shanahan. He eventually dropped out, but when you are able to have money, you're able to affect things. So if somebody like Elon decides to put money into libertarian coffers, or if somebody like Nicole Shanahan decides to put money into libertarian coffers, what you're going to see is panic in both the GOP and in the Democratic Party. And that's why you're seeing so many MAGA operatives hit the libertarians right now. They are terrified that something is going to happen. You have Stephen Miller hitting us. You have Donald Trump hitting us.
No.
You have all of his little minions hitting us because
they just
they're
don't
afraid.
care. They don't care.
MAGA,
They don't care.
Shut up, dude. If you didn't care, you wouldn't hit us, dude. If you didn't care, you wouldn't give us a single fucking thought, but you do.
Can I make a point to Bryce's point? One point. Just one point is that a lot of the problems we have, and I'm not talking about you, Bryce, or anybody in this room, but ultimately libertarians, they talk a game about social justice in terms of freedom for the individual. I'm socially liberal and fiscally conservative, but they almost always vote with the I get more taxes and the spending cut, and they empower a party that is authoritarian when it comes to individual choices in the bedroom, with recreational drugs, with religion. I know libertarians are not for what MAGA is trying to do with church and state, right? And so the problem that a lot of non-libertarians have with libertarians is a lot of you just vote for your pocketbook and you let the rest of the principles just kind of go away. I'm not saying that's you, but I think there's a lot of people out there that don't support the Libertarian Party that might actually be inclined to, but they just don't. They look at the track record of libertarian voters in the party, and they almost always cave into Republicans. And
I don't disagree with that, Brian. I think that you have a point, but I also think that that's propaganda. I don't think a lot of libertarians do that. We don't know how many libertarians voted for Donald Trump. Like, let's be real. We can say and we can pontificate that a bunch of libertarians went over to Donald Trump, but we don't. Clinton does not know everything about the Libertarian Party. He right now probably doesn't have a lot of people within the LNC that he could pick up the phone and have a conversation with, and that they would tell him things.
That's true, but I gotta say though,
great libertarian though. Don't get me wrong, Clint is freaking awesome. So Clint, this is not a hit against you.
I understand.
I just don't think we know enough about how many libertarians ended up in those areas. I understand that this is what liberals throw at us, that we are selfish, that we are self-centered, and that we're racist or whatever those things are. This is all, again, propaganda from the duopoly trying to shut down any kind of third-party voice. They do it to the Green Party, they did it to the Reform Party, and they did it to Bobby Kennedy. It's just the same tactics over and over and over again.
The only brief response I have to that is I think it's a fair frustration a lot of people have, but then I would say when you look at libertarians and where they break, you should see a roughly equal number breaking towards the social freedoms for the left and the fiscal freedoms on the right. And instead, the vast majority break to the right. So that's where we're saying it's hypocrite. It's not you as individuals.
Show me those numbers. Prove that to me. That you say that, but show me the numbers, man.
Social freedoms quickly.
Let me hold on. I do want to go to Michael, and then I'm going to go to Clint, because I know you will. But I did want to go to Michael for a specific aspect, because this is something that Mike was mentioning about the DoD, and I kind of want to kind of hone in on this piece a little bit, because I think I have a fundamental disagreement in how people view the defense budget and like this idea of like carriers and they can be taken out by one missile, right? Because they look at Russia, Ukraine, they look at Israel, Iran, and like they look at Russia, Ukraine, it's like, oh, that's the future of warfare, and like completely forget, well, look what we just did against Iran, and look how like the DoD is right. Sorry, drones aren't replacing the F-22, the F-35, the B-2. Those are the only capabilities that can go anywhere around the world with refueling aircraft capabilities, penetrate air defense assets, and conduct strikes in to accomplish a specific military objective. We can argue because it's, the nuclear power, the Fordo, it's deeper. I mean, obviously it was a very well-defended asset, but the actual military operations, no, you do need the B-2, which costs $2 billion to make. You need the B-21. You need aircraft carriers. You need all these systems to be able to operate, because drones aren't going to solve all the problems. And I think there's this overemphasis. So, I mean, do you believe, though, that that's an archaic version, because you were alluding to that? But my counter to that would be Israel-Iran shows, no, you need air superiority, and drones aren't the only answer to that.
You need a whole network and spectrum and layering of different types of defenses if you want to defend your liberties. And this is where, though, we have a uniparty system within the Defense Department, where those who aspire to be general officers also aspire to become on the boards of the big federal contractors, or to become federal contractors themselves with their own companies. So you can make tens of millions a year right after your retirement if you behave yourself and you promote what the contractors wish you to promote. That's why we have all these old legacy systems that don't really advance the way our country needs them to. And so it creates a corruption in itself of our whole defense posture. And that brings forth a lot of waste. So, for example, there's very little interest in DoD on low-cost, high-impact solutions to defend our interests. This is why we've had such little advancement on drones. It's why we've had such little advancement on non-lethal means of winning conflicts. Why we have such a poor diplomatic service now, where we don't use our diplomacy the way we once used to defend our interests, and then
I'm sorry. You criticized the State Department. I'm sorry, I had to jump in. Clint says, I love that we gutted the USAID. You said we love cutting the State Department. I mean, that's literally the reason why they exist. You might agree or disagree with it, but the reason why they exist is exactly to that point. Solve it diplomatically so we don't spend more money on wars, but then those all get bashed, and now we gutted it. So I'm trying to match both comments into whatever statement is being made, because we just gutted the USAID.
Well, they become ossified and corrupted. So I used to be a USAID contractor for some very small scale projects, and they were low cost, high impact projects. But I saw early on how it's really easy to be corrupted by these things. So I did say it was a $30,000 project, but it had a high value to it. It was to help bring about the end to a war in Nicaragua, and it was effective. But then the company that was started just for that purpose ended up now becoming this huge bloated monstrosity that is just really existing just to pay itself. And so you have 85 to 92% of the money not going for its intended purpose. So when the I think it was the Kennedy administration created USAID, that was part of a post-World War II early nuclear age means of using the gray area of conflict as a peaceful, nonviolent, and even positive way of winning allies, of increasing trade relations, and of combating communist subversion. So if you look at the founding documentation of USAID, it was specifically founded to combat Soviet subversion. It wasn't a giveaway project. It was for our national defense. And it was integrated with CIA, for better or for worse. And it was integrated with DoD, for better or for worse. And as part of the Defense Department, but semi-autonomous from it, it was part of our diplomatic profile as well. But when it gets to having an agenda of its own with no oversight, there has never ever been a full oversight hearing or investigation on the congressional side of USAID since it was founded in the early 1960s.
But that's why Clint said it should be getting away, because they fomented color revolutions, which the whole argument was because these color revolutions were designed for the American empire, whatever. I mean, again, I don't believe on it, but like that's literally what Russian propaganda would say, is like everything, every color revolution that happened anywhere around the world, the people don't have any agency. It was a foreign CIA plot that leveraged USAID.
Yeah.
And so, like, wait a minute.
Well, I was part of one of those revolutions, so I can give it some firsthand.
Stefano, I want an apology right now. Michael just acknowledged he was part of one of those color revolutions.
Yes.
I'm just saying, but that's the whole point, because that was his founding principle to enhance American interest as well. Like, look, we can make an argument. I think there's like less nefarious aspect, but it's like, yeah, USAID had a core tenet of itself to promote democratic institutions, like Radio Free Europe existed to push Western media into the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. That was literally why it was created in Ukraine.
And the thing is that it's not like we live in an era where there's no more competing ideologies. It's not like the war ended and therefore we're fine. The purpose of USAID from the original intention from Kennedy is still very much needed. All we do is sabotage our international standing and our efforts and our influence. That's what we've done. We've shot ourselves.
It's needed.
Why would we feed something that literally is being bastardized by the military-industrial complex? Why do we continue to feed
USAID for a second? There's a good issue here that Stefano.
Hold on.
Let me go to Michael. But my counter to that, Clint and Bryce, would be if China we identify as our major competitor around the world, there's hard power and there's soft power. USAID and the State Department, as Michael is saying, is there for the soft power to advance American interest around the world, because even from an isolationist perspective, you still have that doesn't mean that America has no interest anywhere around the world, and USAID follows it. And so I'm trying to match, because Michael, you were saying, this is a key tenet that we should be focusing more on to reduce our defense budget, but you were also happy that everything is being gutted in the State Department. Is it because you're thinking the State Department USAID became bigger than it should have been?
He's saying it's corrupt.
Nibble, or how would you say that?
Yeah, State Department has become corrupted. It's become an institution of its own, a deep state of its own. USAID was part of the state. Part of the State Department. So if you look at USAID, the State Department has extremely similar problems that USAID had. So how do you make it more efficient and more in tune with the American national interest? And really, getting back to USAID as a tool, there was no single entity to promote liberty in other countries than USAID was when it was started out. That was the intent. It just became corrupted because there was no oversight. You need these very important tools.
How can you prove that became corrupted more than any other government institution has by becoming larger over the years? If anything, USAID's dollars were spent more accountably and more transparently than the defense, than intelligence, and then a bunch of other agencies.
Not at all. Not at all. Doge found that.
What I would say,
you can't trust, again, prior to Doge, the numbers coming out of Doge were political, self-serving, and they contradicted each other left and right. I'm sure at least all of us saw this before Doge was proven to have lied explicitly. So do not trust those numbers.
So what I would say
earlier,
but here's a counterpoint, Michael, because I hear that. I think it's important to highlight that the highest number of U.S. federal corruption convictions occurred within the CBP as the overall organization, to include Border Patrol, right? Yet their budget has not been touched at all. And if anything, has expanded greatly, right? And they have the highest level of federal conviction, because obviously it makes sense, because if you want to smuggle something, who do you bribe? The Border Patrol agent or the CBP agent, right? That's something that I've always scratched my head about, was like, and it's to Brian's point, there was this corruption, and it's comes like a talking point. But then when we try to go down to the nitty and gritty about like, okay, well, we're trying to gain influence here, so we'll build a well here because we want to get people here, and this, like you said, low cost, high impact. If we can get this village that's next to maybe a mining facility that the Chinese are using, we want to show them, look, they're predatory in nature as Chinese. We want to show American, we're going to give you something with nothing in return, goodwill. Here, we're going to fund a well. But then you can grab that and say, we're giving water to this town that has nothing. See, this is fraud, waste, and abuse. But that's the thing. It's like, even when you're highlighting the role of U.S. soft power in these organizations, it just gets subservient of this idea of fraud, waste, and abuse and corruption is now this deep state. But it's there to, so how then, I'm trying to figure out, and I want that answer, what would you do if you were writing the budget And if you were in the State Department, how would you change it? Because you do believe then USAID and the State Department play a fundamental role in American national security. So what would you do specifically different that we're not seeing now? And then I'll go to Clint.
Sure. First, you need to raise the standards for recruitment and make it a rewarding career. And the reward doesn't just come with good pay and benefits. It comes with a self-satisfaction and fulfillment that you're just not a do-gooder, but you're working for America and working for, as a public servant. These government agencies and the contractors have often lost the sight of being servants of the public. And they laugh at the idea of defending the Constitution. And so you need to get rid of a lot of the deadwood, which is what I think gutting USAID was important to do. But USAID was not abolished. It still exists, and there will be some sort of foreign assistance program that will be reconstituted in a MAGA type of way to make sure that any help that we render to other countries, whether it's humanitarian disaster relief, whether it's medical, whether it's development, is always fundamentally in the U.S. interests. Whether it is supporting our friends where we have them, making friends where we have them, or opposing our adversaries where we have them in troublesome areas, and not needing to resort to military force, which tends to be our default activity.
But they cut 96 to 97% of the staff after General Mattis said, I need more money from USAID and the State Department to help me prevent wars that I don't want to have to fight. The more we spend there, the less. And what are they doing? They're devastating those budgets, and they're putting more into defense. This is literally what top generals who really know what they're talking about, and James Mattis is one of them. They said we need to work and have diplomacy and development be hand in hand. And we've literally sabotaged diplomacy and development, and we're saying, forget about speak softly and carry a big stick. Here's a big stick. Just go do stuff. Remake the world with a big stick.
Yeah.
But that's just
our influence, and invited China and Russia to fill in the vacuum that we have now created, and they're doing it now. And people are dying because of these cuts, and we're losing influence to our enemies because of this.
No one's dying because of these cuts, because most of the cuts were when you've got 85 to 92% of the money.
Don't deny that they exist.
Bandits.
Michael, quickly answer, because I need to go to Clint. We got to end this soon. Michael, quickly answer, and then I
died in Africa.
Go ahead,
Sorry,
Michael.
I couldn't hear that.
What people? You were saying people don't die? I'll let you finish that. I'm going to go to Clint.
We're not cutting off emergency medical. We're not cutting off
You're wrong.
sanitation.
You're wrong.
Right. Okay, wait.
People aren't dying because of that. The only people who are getting hurt are the Beltway bandits who are making billions off it. And
That's absolutely false.
You look at the senators and the congressmen who are screaming loudest about it. It's the ones from Virginia and Maryland whose constituents are these big Beltway bandit industries.
Babies that died screaming. Actually.
Okay, let me answer. Let me answer, please. So this is a very hagiographized version of the modern U.S. State Department. And I don't disagree with Michael that there are examples historically where they were actually working towards peace. But this whole argument that it's soft power is just bullshit. I'm sorry. When you actually go into foreign countries, borders to the largest nuclear powers on Earth, and you overthrow their government as they did with the Maidan Revolution, you are ultimately jeopardizing the world. So you can say that that's to avoid war. It actually brought about a war. They don't ever talk about that. They don't ever put that at the foot of USAID, which they ought to. Additionally, the reason that most libertarians, the reason that most libertarians ultimately end up voting Republican lately is because the Democrat Party has become an existential threat to our liberty that is paramount to that of the GOP. That's the reality. The Democrats were responsible for the censorship regime. They're responsible for gun grabbing nonstop. They're also now the party of war. They used to be at least decent on that. They're not anymore. There's basically no civil liberty that they stand up for except for LGBTQILMNOP plus rights. So yeah, that's the reason that they've lost libertarians. That's the reason that the libertarians oftentimes at the end of the day end up resorting to voting for the GOP, because we perceive the Democrats to be an existential threat. That's not to say that we love the GOP. We don't. We hate 99% of them. Thomas Massey's our guy.
Right. Hold on. Let me counter this. Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is, I hear that a lot, and I think there's a lot because of COVID, and I think there's a lot of deep scars because of the COVID quote unquote misinformation and all that, right? But if we talk about, for example, separation of church and state, a core tenet of American policy, a core tenet of libertarianism that has been completely thrown out by the GOP, not a concern, not one, zero, zilch, nada, never.
Well, give me an example. Give me an example of how they're bringing the church into the government.
Well, let's look at Texas. right? And trying to put the 10 Commandments in all public schools. Louisiana.
You do realize, Stefano, you do realize that there
is.
is. Hold on 1 second, because I'm sorry, but I'm not going to let you just say propaganda and get away with it. You have libertarians that are in Texas. Hold on. You have libertarians in Texas that are absolutely protesting that shit.
Right, but hold on. Brian, stop. Bryce, I'm here to be the counter voice. So number one, let me be the counter voice. You say something, I'm going to counter it. Just like I did what Michael could have accused me of being part of the military industrial complex when I defended aircraft carriers in the B-2. He did it. He responded because I'm hosting and I'm going to be counterpoint. So let's make that clear. I'm not here. I'm here to do this, right? I'm here to give counterpoint. So let me just put my foot down on that. Number two, I understand libertarians are doing it. Okay. But clearly that's not a problem from your perspective. Number two, and I asked this directly to Clint yesterday on the space, and Clint can back me up on this, right? Clint, we have seen the two largest increase in federal power has happened under Republican presidents. The establishment of the Department of Homeland Security after 9/11, and with this and the deportation policy, to the point where we now, which libertarians, I remember, especially the Koch brothers, that really were against mass incarceration. What you're saying is mass incarceration is completely fine, no due process, nothing like that. Hold on. As long as we think you're an illegal. Because what you're saying is, hey, Democrats hate liberty because of all this, only LGBTQ rights. Let's forget about pro-choice. Let's forget about the pro-choice and hold on, Bryce. I want to go to Clint on this. But because this is the counterpoint from that would be, wait a minute, we literally have now the largest incarceration rate in this country in a mass arrest program. And from
Stefano, here's your problem. You keep going to Clint for everything, and you assume Clint talks for every single libertarian. I think, like I said, Clint's a great guy.
I've spoken very little.
Josie doesn't speak for libertarians. Clint doesn't speak for libertarians. You're taking voices, and they have their own independent
That's true.
Opinions. And he's allowed his own opinion, but you cannot broad stroke his views with libertarianism. I'm sorry.
Bryce. Clint was making a point about a libertarian perspective and why they generally support the GOP. I am going to him to follow up on
he's challenging my assertion that it's fine.
I've asked you questions in favor of the libertarianism of Elon Musk, and I could do it like Bryce. I'm here again as a host. He said a point. I want to counterpoint that. I'm not attacking libertarian policy. He said something why libertarians generally support the GOP. Please let me finish this point. So, Clint, back to you. You're concerned about that. Let me go specifically to the immigration. Because again, we're having this mass incarceration, record numbers.
Can I answer as the immigration issue, because this is a very complex topic, and Bryce is absolutely right. I don't speak for all libertarians, particularly when it comes to border issues. I have my own opinion on this. I perceive that once again to be an electoral, basically rigging scheme that was ran by the Democrats, which is exactly why Alejandro Mayorkas lied repeatedly and perjured himself, I might add, when he left the border wide open, and Biden did the same thing. They were trying to bring in illegals by the tens of millions so that the census would be reflected as such, so that they could have as much representation in blue states, therefore having a supermajority in Congress in perpetuity. So this is the unfortunate reality. If you're going to deal with that threat, which is a supermajority of the Democrats, which I perceive to be existential threats to me, as I already described, risking World War III, censorship, gun grabbing, all down the line, garbage. And they spend into oblivion just as the GOP does. So, yes, you're absolutely right. Adding $150 billion to the border, to the immigration services, everything else, CBP, is very, very dangerous, and it's ultimately going to come back and be used against us domestically, not just the illegal immigrants. It's going to be used against us eventually. That's ultimately the reality. That doesn't mean that I have to accept the fact that my country doesn't exist anymore. So that's the reason that I've come out in support of shutting down the border and deportations, because I now recognize what game was being played. But that's not to say that I'm blind to the threats and the risks that you described. I agree with you. They are significant.
Okay, no, I just
that apply as a Democrat.
So I just want to. I think the issue we have, and I think what I'm hearing again, this is kind of where we've talked about this in multiple spaces. I think Clint, you were that one where we're about emotions and how important it is in politics. And for those, I mean, I would highly encourage. I think that was a phenomenal conversation that we had that really laid everything out. But I do have to end this space. I've actually gone over. Bryce, again, I'm not here
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm not here to defend anybody. Look, for me personally, Bryce, what I do on Twitter is I cover Mexican cartels. Haven't talked about that once in any of my things. So that's not why I'm here. I'm doing this because I want to foment debate. And especially when it gets passionate like this, that's great. That's what I want. And I want challenge, and I want there to be an ability to speak freely. And at the same time, though, to ensure that at any point there's a counterpoint. And so
yeah, you were devil's advocating. I appreciate it. I like to have my ideas challenged, so I appreciate that. And just to clarify, yes, I have a more right-leaning version of libertarianism from the broader party. In fact, I think I speak for more lowercase L libertarians than I do the capital L libertarians, like the actual hardcore party members that have been in it for a long time. But that's the divide. You know, I'm a Ron Paulian.
Bryce, go ahead. Say your point. I'll let you go with your point.
Yeah, I'm not against you. What I'm just saying is a lot of people tend to just broad stroke libertarians because of and again, Clint, please don't take any offense to what I'm saying.
It's
you
fine.
know that I
It's
like
fine.
you and I support you. Based off of what a influencer says, and not all of the libertarian, whether it's Josie, whether it's Clint, whether whoever it is that you're looking at, speak for libertarians broadly. And that's all I'm trying to say. Like, if you want to have a discussion about libertarians, invite them. Let's have that conversation.
Okay, actually,
Don't broad
so
stroke them.
perfect, because we're literally going to open up a space on now, no video, just on the phone or on your computer. We're actually going to have a space to continue about this conversation, the big beautiful bill. It is hilarious to me that every time we have a conversation about this, I would say I have never heard more voices from the libertarian perspective than I do from Mario Spaces. I don't know how you guys do it.
I totally agree. I really appreciate the
most libertarian space I ever hear in any political conversations. And I want everybody here, please, let's migrate over to the space on X. I'm going to co-host in a second, and I'm all here about challenging everybody, and we'll get it rolling. But again, to everybody here, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate everybody here. We'll see you guys in the space. And everybody, please make sure you follow all the speakers, Mario, and we'll see you soon.